to my mind, and right now, that happens to be the last couple of days, I've been thinking a lot about government bureaucracy and how much it really truly bothers me. And of course, I think we all are bothered by government bureaucracy, but more specifically, I'm talking about like any government process that's put into place either at the federal, state, or local level that basically promises and assures to provide some type of public service, but instead only provides jobs, in some cases well-paying jobs, in some cases not so well-paying jobs, to people that literally don't care about the purpose nor the mission of their work, but only care about collecting that check, compensation, benefits, whatever the taxpayer-funded job is affording them, and don't care about anything else, and don't care about doing the basic functions of their job. And so you may think, well, what do I mean by that? Like, what am I talking about? So, for example, there's been several instances in my life, starting when I was a teenager as well as an adult, where I directly observe people taking like a job they're placed in. I have no idea how they got the job. I almost wonder if these people were like all best friends and like appointed each other to jobs. That happens all the time in the government, believe it or not. Waste, fraud, and abuse is a real thing all throughout the government. And basically don't do what they're supposed to do. Like, they may sit at a desk or occupy an office space, but if their job is to like help people get skills to learn more about entrepreneurship or learn how to obtain employment or to advance themselves in the community in some way economically, they don't do that at all. They just rudely will hand out whatever brochure they have a box of that's supplied by the government, whatever bad computer that they have that was supplied by the government, stick you in front of that. Historically, of course, things have changed a lot with computers. Things have advanced a lot. But it seems like the government always has like the worst of the worst and pays the most for it. And then we'll basically give you the what I call the anti-pep talk. And it's basically like if you go on TikTok or YouTube or LinkedIn and you get like all this really great training about career, and you know, people will typically be, well, always will be very, very positive and give a lot of useful, helpful information, which is why they're so successful and so many people follow them. Whereas in the government, there's none of those kinds of requirements. Now, they'll say that there are, but there never are. And there's never enforced. Now, they may be selectively enforced if somebody doesn't like somebody and is trying to get rid of them, but they're never really uniformly enforced from what I've seen at any level of government. So what you end up having happen is people working there that shouldn't be working there, that aren't doing their jobs, and, you know, they're actually harming people. Because if you're like talking down to people, which government workers, in my experience, many of them love to do. Not all, of course. You know, you have a minority that are really good people, really doing great work when they interact with the public. And then you have everybody else. And it's like, it's harmful. So it's like not only are you charging the taxpayers money to do a bad job in, let's say, employment or entrepreneurship type services, but now you're actually like harming the public by giving them misinformation or bad information about career prospects or employment or whatever, because you were talking down to them, being nasty to them. And this happens all the time in the government, whether it be, I'm going to focus on career, for example, or entrepreneurship, but whether it be that or something else, it happens all the time. And there's just like a large number of people that work in the government in these positions of power where they feel like they can be powerful over members of the public, or they're in a supervisory role, and they'll treat the people that they work with, their subordinates, them like crap, and they'll treat the public like garbage too, because they think they can get away with it. And it's particularly problematic in these taxpayer-funded roles. The Veterans Health Administration is a total example of this. Another example of this would be spacing here for a minute. Veterans Health Administration does this a lot with the veterans because they can get away with it. And the people that stay there are typically very toxic people that enjoy high conflict work environments, because that's what you're going to get at that organization. Or they're really great at being doormats so that they can kind of save themselves from being dragged through civil service mud that doesn't protect people that need to be protected. As I talked about last night at great length and have in the past with Merit System Protection Board, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. But most recently, the Department of Defense, and I covered this in a video, announced this new initiative, right? They're always doing some new initiative where they're basically going to make people go to their chain of command potentially as an avenue for mental health help and make them basically disclose what would otherwise in the civilian world be confidential information to their commanders. Now, I think they're trying to say like it's an option, like you don't have to do that. However, it definitely doesn't sound very optional in the way things are in the military. Things become mandates very quickly. And even with like military one source, that's not a thing where you have confidentiality. The limits of confidentiality are so low that it's pretty much like you go there, you could end up having information you thought was confidential being handed over to your commander, your chain of command, your unit, basically. Like it's just this big brother watch system. And I remember Department of Defense, Biden, which I'm not trying to name any politicians, I usually don't even do that, but Biden, there was an announcement that was made formally in conjunction with Department of Defense representatives saying that, like, oh, this will be one more resource for service members and their families on top of what they already have. But the reality is, it's just going to be one more layer of bureaucracy on top of what's already in existence. And really, after having spent years dealing with bureaucracy, it's like I've never been assisted by any of these so-called government programs that are supposed to help people with career, entrepreneurship, or anything at all. It's like all this tax money, most of it, in my opinion, is like fraud, waste, and abuse. It just like goes to the wayside. It's all this tax money being bled out by the taxpayers, and it drives me crazy because it's a constant situation where people are expected to pay more and more money, and the deficit goes higher and higher. All the while, nothing ever really changes or improves or gets solved. And anytime they talk about cuts, it's like never smart cuts. It's like there is a way to cut money, cut fat without harming people. But instead, they don't. They don't do that at all. And like I was really disturbed by some of the cuts they're talking about. Like they were talking about how they're going to cut from basically the poorest people that need help getting food in our country. It's really sad. And it's like, that's really not a good way to make cuts. A good way to make cuts would be to cut out the useless civil service system, but they don't want to do that because the useless civil service system is employing a lot of these well-paid paper pushers, and there are lobbyists for them. You know who has no lobbyists? The most disadvantaged Americans, that's who. And there's just a lot of bureaucracy that needs to be eliminated. And I feel strongly that bureaucracy and all these different programs and things are really just created for the benefit of the politicians and the people that work in them and no one else.